The hunters arrived. The Vrakan armada dropped out of hyperspace like a pack of wolves scenting blood. 27 warships arranged themselves in perfect hunting formation around the third planet, their sleek hulls bristling with weapons designed to crack worlds and subjugate species. Admiral Zexton stood on the command deck of the flagship Apex Predator, his 4 arms crossed behind his back as he studied the blue-green marble rotating below. Earth hung in space like a wounded animal, exactly as the intelligence reports had described. Massive storm systems swirled across continents, scarred by impact craters. The northern hemisphere showed clear signs of nuclear devastation, while the southern regions appeared to be choking under toxic cloud cover. Most telling of all, the electromagnetic spectrum remained eerily quiet. No communications, no energy signatures, no signs of organized civilization. "Scan complete, Admiral," reported Sub-Commander Veltara, her scaled fingers dancing across the sensor array. "Confirmed radiation levels, consistent with planetary-scale warfare. Atmospheric toxicity at 347% above baseline for human survival. No active technology signatures detected." Zexton's predatory grin revealed rows of razor-sharp teeth. The Vrakan had spent 3 centuries hunting the scattered human colonies that had fled Earth before its apparent destruction. They had tracked down and enslaved 17 different human settlements, each one falling within days to superior Vrakan tactics and technology. Now they had found the source, the legendary homeworld that had supposedly destroyed itself in nuclear fire. "Excellent," he purred, his voice carrying the satisfied tone of a hunter who had cornered wounded prey. "Deploy the harvesting teams. I want full biological scans of the major population centers. If any humans survived in underground bunkers, they will make excellent specimens for the flesh markets." The first wave of landing craft launched from the fleet like metallic spears hurled at the planet's surface. 3 assault teams, each consisting of 50 elite Vrakan hunters, equipped with the finest armor and weapons their empire could provide. Their targets were the ruins of New York, London, and Tokyo, cities that orbital scans suggested might still contain salvageable technology and possibly surviving humans. Team Alpha descended through the poisonous atmosphere toward the twisted remains of Manhattan. Squad leader Carvex watched through his helmet display as the landing craft's cameras revealed a hellscape of melted skyscrapers and irradiated wasteland. Perfect hunting ground for cornering desperate survivors. "Touchdown in 30 seconds, announced the pilot. "Atmospheric processors show breathable air once we clear the radiation zone. Scanners indicate possible movement in the subway system." Carvex's mandibles clicked with anticipation. Humans hiding underground like frightened rodents. This would be easier than hunting the colony worlds. The landing craft touched down in what had once been Central Park, now a crater filled with crystallized sand. The assault team deployed with military precision, weapons ready, sensors scanning for life signs. For exactly 17 minutes, everything proceeded according to protocol. Then they vanished. Back on the Apex Predator, communications specialist Nexala frowned at his console. "Admiral, we've lost contact with Team Alpha." "Define lost contact," Zexton demanded, his good mood evaporating. "Complete signal blackout, sir. No distress beacon, no final transmission, nothing. It's as if they simply ... stopped existing." Zexton's tail lashed in irritation. "Equipment malfunction. The radiation must be interfering with communications. What about teams Beta and Gamma?" Before Nexala could respond, two more indicators on his board went dark. 3,000 feet beneath the ruins of Manhattan, Dr. Alina Vasquez stood in the main command center of what the surface world had never known existed. The global underground network stretched beneath every major population center on Earth, a vast interconnected system of self-sufficient cities that had been under construction for over a century before the surface war began. The war had been intentional, planned, executed with precision to make Earth appear uninhabitable while humanity retreated into its carefully prepared sanctuary. 3 teams neutralized, reported Captain Marcus Chen, his voice carrying the calm professionalism of someone who had been fighting this shadow war for 20 years. Phantom protocol executed flawlessly. No survivors, no evidence. Alina nodded, her attention focused on the holographic display showing the vacant fleet in orbit. She had been waiting for this moment since the first reports of human colonies being enslaved reached Earth through their hidden communication networks. The Vracan had made a critical error in assuming Earth was defenseless. Analysis of their technology, she asked. Lieutenant Kara Singh looked up from her console, where she had been monitoring every communication from the alien fleet. Standard hunter-killer configuration, but more advanced than previous encounters. Energy weapons, personal shields, enhanced. Armor, they're equipped for fighting humans who haven't had time to prepare. Which we have had, Alina said with grim satisfaction. 80 years of preparation, to be exact. The surface war had lasted only 3 years, but it had served its purpose perfectly. Every major power had participated in the carefully orchestrated nuclear exchange, creating the appearance of species suicide while the real population sheltered in the deep cities. The survivors who remained on the surface had been volunteers, maintaining the illusion of a dying world while the majority of humanity evolved in the depths. They had become something the galaxy had never encountered before, a species that had faked its own extinction and spent nearly a century preparing for the day its enemies would come looking for easy prey. Phantom teams report successful elimination of landing parties, Chen continued. The Vracan have no idea what happened to their people. Stealth suits performed perfectly. Neural scramblers disrupted their communication systems before they could report contact. Alina studied the tactical display. Each red dot represented a Vracan warship, sleek and deadly. In any conventional engagement, they would be more than capable of sterilizing Earth's surface. But conventional warfare was exactly what humanity had abandoned. Phase 2, she ordered. Begin the haunting. Across the planet, invisible figures began to move. The Phantom Cores represented humanity's greatest achievement in the century since the false apocalypse. Soldiers enhanced with biotechnology that made them nearly undetectable, equipped with weapons that could disable alien technology without leaving traces, trained in psychological warfare that could drive enemy forces to madness without ever revealing the source of their terror. Admiral Zexton paced his command deck like a caged predator. In the 6 hours since the first teams had vanished, he had dispatched 12 more landing parties. All had suffered the same fate. No bodies recovered, no wreckage found, no indication of what had happened to over 600 of his finest hunters. Sir Veltura said hesitantly, "Perhaps we should consider orbital bombardment. If there are survivors using some form of stealth technology, ... double quotes. No, Zexon snarled. Bombardment would destroy any salvageable resources. And there's no technology in the galaxy that could hide an entire resistance force from our scanners." He turned to study Earth's surface on the main screen. They're here somewhere. Weak, frightened humans, cowering in holes. We simply need to dig them out. What he couldn't see were the thousands of micro-drones that had already attached themselves to his fleet's hulls, each one no larger than a grain of sand, invisible to conventional sensors, equipped with sophisticated electronic warfare packages designed specifically to counter Vraken technology. The drones began their work slowly, subtly. Navigation systems started showing minor discrepancies. Communication arrays developed intermittent static. Weapon targeting systems experienced microscopic delays in response time. Nothing dramatic enough to indicate sabotage, just the kind of minor malfunctions that might be expected from equipment operating in Earth's harsh electromagnetic environment. Admiral Nexler called out, his voice tight with barely controlled. "Fear, I'm receiving, ... Something, a transmission from the planet's surface. Put it through," Zexton ordered. The speakers crackled to life, but instead of words, an eerie sound filled the command deck. It was barely recognizable as music, a haunting melody played on instruments that seemed to shift and change, creating harmonics that made the crew's scales itch and their inner ears ache. The song seemed to whisper of vast spaces beneath the earth, of eyes watching from darkness, of prey that had become something else entirely. "Cut transmission," Zexton ordered, but Nexler S-Claws scrambled uselessly over his controls. "I can't, sir. The signal is overriding our systems." The music continued for exactly 3 minutes and 17 seconds, then stopped abruptly. In the silence that followed, every Vraken on the command deck felt a chill that had nothing to do with temperature. Deep beneath Earth's surface, Alina Vasquez allowed herself a small smile. The Psychological Warfare Division had spent decades perfecting that particular piece of music, designed to trigger primal fear responses in the Vraken nervous system. The next phase would be even more unsettling. "Begin the Whisper campaign," she ordered. Across the Vraken fleet, crew members began reporting strange phenomena: shadows moving in peripheral vision, sounds in empty corridors, equipment that seemed to activate by itself, displaying images of human faces before shutting down. The ship's AI systems started producing random glitches that spelled out words in human languages: watching, waiting, coming. None of it was random. Every apparition, every whisper, every flicker of movement was carefully orchestrated by humanity's most sophisticated psychological warfare specialists. The Vraken had hunted humans across 17 worlds, confident in their superiority. Now, they were learning what it felt like to be the ones being stalked. Admiral Zexton tried to maintain discipline among his increasingly nervous crew, but doubt had begun to creep into his mind. In 3 centuries of conquest, the Vraken had never encountered resistance like this. Their prey had always been conventional armies that fought with weapons, governments that surrendered when faced with superior force, populations that submitted to avoid extinction. This was different. This was like fighting ghosts. "Sir," Veltora reported, her usual composure cracking, "we're detecting seismic activity across multiple continents. It appears to be artificial, like something massive is moving beneath." The surface, Zexton studied the readings. The seismic patterns were too regular to be natural, too widespread to be random. They formed a network that seemed to connect every major landmass on the planet, as if something vast and interconnected was stirring to life deep underground. The predators become prey. The seismic readings had been the beginning of Admiral Zexton's education in true terror. For 12 hours, his fleet had hung in orbit around Earth like wolves, surrounding what they thought was a wounded deer, only to discover they had cornered something far more dangerous. "Fleet status report," Zexton demanded. his forearms gripping the command rail as another tremor ran through the apex predator's hull. Commander. Veltara's scales had lost their usual lustrous sheen, now appearing dull and stressed. 17. Ship's reporting system anomalies. Admiral. Navigation computers are showing conflicting data. Some crews are reporting psychological disturbances. The psychological disturbances had started subtly. Crew members claiming to see human faces in reflective surfaces, voices whispering in human languages through the ventilation systems. But as the hours passed, the phenomena had become more aggressive. Entire sections of ships were reporting equipment failures that spelled out messages: "We see you. You are not welcome. Leave now or join your landing teams." Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean floor, Dr. Elena Vasquez monitored the deteriorating situation aboard the Draken fleets through a network of surveillance devices that had been decades in the making. Humanity's preparation for this moment had been thorough beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. Phantom Corps reports ready for Phase 3, Captain Chen announced. "We have assets positioned on every ship in their fleet." Alina nodded, studying the holographic display that showed the Vraken vessels in perfect detail. Each ship was now thoroughly compromised by micro-infiltrators, tiny human-built devices that had been attaching themselves to alien hulls for the past 18 hours. The Vraken sensors, designed to detect energy weapons and conventional threats, were completely blind to humanity's biomechanical technology. "Initiate the harvest," Alina ordered. What the Vraken had never understood was that humanity had not simply survived the surface war. They had evolved. The decades underground had been spent not just in hiding, but in fundamental transformation. Genetic engineering, cybernetic enhancement, biotechnology that blurred the line between organism and machine. The humans, who now emerged from their hidden cities, were as far beyond their ancestors as their ancestors had been beyond primitive apes. Lieutenant Kara Singh, her neural implants interfacing directly with Earth's global communication network, spoke without looking. Up from her console, Vraken Admiral is attempting to establish contact with their home fleet. Shall I permit the transmission? Not yet, Alina replied. Let them experience complete isolation first. Fear is most effective when the prey believes it is truly alone. Aboard, the apex predator, Admiral Zexton, had reached the same conclusion. Whatever was happening to his fleet, they were facing it without backup or support. The hyperspace communication array had been malfunctioning for hours, producing only static when he tried to contact Vraken Command. "Sir," Navigation Officer Nexela reported, his voice barely above a whisper, "the stellar positioning system is showing impossible readings. According to our instruments, Earth has moved 37,000 kilometers closer to its star in the last 6 hours." "That's impossible," Zexton snarled, but even as he spoke, he could see the readings himself. Either their instruments were completely compromised, or something was manipulating their perception of reality itself. The truth was far more sophisticated than simple sensor manipulation. Humanity's Phantom Corps had spent the previous day carefully positioning field generators around the Vraken fleet, devices that could create localized distortions in space-time. The effect was subtle but profound. The alien ships were gradually being pulled out of their stable orbit without their crews realizing it. Admiral Veltara called out, her voice cracking with strain. "I'm receiving reports from across the fleet. Crew members are disappearing." This was Phase 3 in action. The same stealth technology that had eliminated the landing teams was now being deployed against the ships themselves. Enhanced humans, invisible to Vraken sensors, were moving through the alien vessels like ghosts. They didn't kill their targets immediately. Instead, they used neurological disruptors to render the aliens unconscious, then relocated them to empty cargo holds where they awoke to find themselves imprisoned with no memory of how they had gotten there. The psychological effect was devastating. Experienced hunters who had conquered dozens of worlds found themselves helpless against an enemy they couldn't see, couldn't track, and couldn't understand. "Seal all sections," Sexton ordered. "Emergency protocols. All crew members report to designated safe zones immediately." But the safe zones weren't safe. The Phantom Corps had studied Vraken psychology and tactics for decades, analyzing data from every human colony that had fallen to their attacks. They knew exactly how the aliens would respond to threat situations, and they had prepared countermeasures for every possible reaction. As Vraken crew members huddled together in their designated safe areas, they began to experience shared hallucinations. Images of their fallen comrades, seeming to speak warnings about the humans they had underestimated. Visions of Earth's surface peeling away to reveal vast underground cities, filled with beings that had transcended the limitations of ordinary biology. The visions weren't entirely false. 3 miles beneath the former site of Denver, one of Earth's largest underground cities, housed nearly 2 million humans who had spent their entire lives preparing for this confrontation. The city's bioarchitectural structures grew from living coral that had been genetically modified to process radiation and convert it into usable energy. The residents moved through organic corridors that pulsed with bioluminescent life, their own bodies enhanced with symbiotic organisms that made them capable of surviving in environments that would kill ordinary humans. "They're beginning to understand," Alina observed, watching as panic spread through the Vraken fleet. "But understanding and accepting are different things." Captain Chen's voice carried grim satisfaction as he reported from the field. "Phantom Team 7 has secured the flagship's engineering section. We now have control of their power grid and life support systems. Shall we proceed with the demonstration?" "Proceed," Alina confirmed. The lights throughout the Apex Predator flickered and died, plunging the massive warship into absolute darkness. Emergency power failed to activate. Life support systems shut down completely. In the suffocating blackness, the Vraken crew heard something impossible, the sound of human laughter, coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. The darkness lasted exactly 60 seconds, then the lights returned as suddenly as they had gone. But now every display screen throughout the ship showed the same image, a human face, ancient and wise, with eyes that seemed to look directly at each individual viewer. When the figure spoke, its voice carried through every speaker on every ship in the fleet simultaneously. "You came to Earth seeking prey," the voice said, speaking perfect Vraken with an accent that suggested centuries of study. "You believed you would find the remnants of a broken species, cowering in ruins, waiting to be harvested like frightened animals." Admiral Zextan stared at the screen, his predatory confidence finally beginning to crack. This was no random survivor. The being addressing him spoke with the authority of someone who had planned this encounter for decades. "You were correct in one assessment," the figure continued. "Earth's surface did die in fire. But death, Admiral Zextan, can be a form of transformation. We allowed our world to burn so that something new could rise from the ashes." The screens flickered, showing images of the underground cities, the enhanced humans, the technology that had been developed in secret while the galaxy believed humanity was extinct. Sexton watched in growing horror as he realized the scope of what they had walked into. For 80 years, we have been preparing for this moment, the voice explained. Every human colony you conquered, every survivor you enslaved, every piece of intelligence you gathered about our species has been part of this preparation. We allowed you to hunt us so that we could learn everything about you. The Admiral's tail thrashed in frustrated rage. What do you want? He demanded. Justice, the figure replied simply, and a message delivered to your empire. The screens changed again, showing technical specifications for Vraken weapons, ship designs, and military strategies. Information that should have been classified at the highest levels of their command structure. We know the location of every world, the voice continued. We know the weaknesses in your technology, the gaps in your defenses, the psychology of your species. For 80 years, we have been studying you while you believed yourselves to be the hunters. Sexton realized with dawning terror that this had been planned from the beginning. The human colonies hadn't been conquered by superior Vraken tactics. They had been sacrificed deliberately, allowing themselves to be captured so that their deaths could provide intelligence for Earth's eventual counterattack. Your choice is simple, the figure said. You can attempt to fight us here, in which case your fleet will disappear just as your landing teams did, and the Vraken Empire will never know what happened to you. Or you can return home and deliver our message to your leaders. What message? Sexton asked, his voice barely above a whisper. That humanity is no longer prey, the figure replied. We have become something else, something patient, something that remembers every injustice and has the power to repay it. Tell your empire that Earth sends its regards and that we will be visiting them soon. The screens went dark. Throughout the fleet, systems began powering down in sequence, not damaged or destroyed, but simply deactivated by an intelligence that had complete control over their technology. In the silence that followed, Admiral Sexton made his choice. Pride warred with survival instinct, and for the first time in his career, survival won. Signal the fleet, he ordered quietly. Prepare for immediate hyperspace jump. Destination, Admiral? Asked Feltora. Home, he replied, staring at Earth with new understanding. We need to warn them what's coming. As the Vraken fleet prepared to flee, Alina Vasca stood in her command center, watching their retreat with satisfaction. But this was only the beginning. For 80 years, humanity had been preparing not just to defend themselves, but to ensure that no other species would ever again face the fate of the 17 lost colonies. The message would be delivered. The Vraken Empire would learn that their victims had become something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. And then, when they were ready, humanity would keep its promise. The age of being prey was over. The age of the hunt was about to begin.